Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Joseph Ward, and welcome to my own The Shoulders of Giants YouTube channel. Thank you for joining me. Make sure you subscribe to this channel. Make sure you share this channel and that notification button. Click that notification button so every time I drop a new video, you will know what's going on. African history at your fingertips through this channel. You're getting biographies of your sung and unsung heroes right at your fingertips. So tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend about On the Shoulders of Giants. Well, you can learn about yourself and we tell our own stories. Peace out. Hey, what's up, everybody? How you doing? Joseph Ward here once again, coming straight from the South, giving you African history at your fingertips through my On the Shoulders of Giants YouTube channel. So today's video, I want to give you a brief overview of the history of the relationship between black people in America and the police forces. One of the reasons why I want to do this video, for one, I think we should know this history. We should know the reason why we have so much tension between the people of our communities and the police forces. Also, a narrative has been created and is circulating as if black people in America just decided to not like the police. A narrative is being created to kind of paint the picture that the issues that we have with police departments are new. Like it's something that developed in the 1950s or 60s or only when the Black Panthers started. And actually, from my research, the issues that we've been having with police forces date back to the 1500s. So let me go into it, right? So the predecessors, or you could say the prototype of the slave patrols, the prototype to the slave patrols existed in Central and South America and in the Caribbean during like the 1530s and the mid 1500s, right? Around 1600, the island of Barbados, being a British colony, they adopted a European style of a military style of police patrolling, a style that was later adopted by Jamaica, Antigua, and South Carolina. So basically an aggressive form of subjugating slaves and blacks who were free to instill fear, right? And so let's come to the Americas. Now, there seems to be in the Americas, in the beginning, two types of police patrolling that was created. But nevertheless, both types of police patrolling were oppressive to blacks, were designed to keep the unruly intact, right? So cities like Boston and New York and Philadelphia were some of the first ones to create night watches. So Boston created night watches in 1636, New York in 1658, and Philadelphia in the 1700s. And the night watches were complemented later on in 1800s by day watches. And New York established day watches in around 1933, excuse me. So now, the issue with these day watches were volunteers. People weren't paid, so it wasn't like the modern day police force. People were not paid. They were not professionals at this. They just enlisted some people, but nevertheless, it was still designed to keep the unruly intact and, of course, keep slaves in line and keep black people in line. Right now, around the 1820s, late 1820s, around 1829. Let me read this to you. The concept of a professional police force was copied from London's Metropolitan Police Department, which had been established in 1829. These peace agents were called peelers or bobbies after Sir Robert Peel, founder of the institution. The American version of these agents were known as coppers because they wore copper stars as badges on their uniforms. They were available 24/7, carried guns, and were trained to think of themselves as better than the working class that they recruited from. That last part was an opinion by the writer, but nevertheless giving you the idea of one of the founding concepts of modern police force or modern police officers. So I'm going to read this to you as well. In order for the police force to be effective, Peel believed it should work under his principles of law enforcement, which explicitly stated an ideology summarized by, and I'm going to give you the following 9 points. Now, these are his points. These are not necessarily things that are happening today, but these are the points that Peel created. So the first one is the police exist to prevent crime and disorder. Police must maintain public respect and approval in order to perform their duties. Willing cooperation of the public to voluntarily observe laws and must be secured. Police use of force depends on the degree of cooperation of the public. The police must be friendly to all members of society while enforcing the law in a non-biased manner. Use of physical force should be to the extent necessary to secure the compliance of the law. Police are the public and public are the police. Police should protect and uphold the law, not the state. Efficiency is measured by the absence of crime or disorder. So those are the ideas that Peel created for policing. Now, the volunteers that were part of the patrollers were overseen by constables, and these constables, I guess you could say, all this kind of helped transform into the modern police force, where you have the overseers or the people who are the supervisors of the police officers who we would see on a regular basis, right? Around 1830, the idea of a centralized municipal police department was created in the United States. In 1838, the city of Boston established the first police force, followed by New York in 1845, Albany, New York, and Chicago in 1851, New Orleans and Cincinnati in 1853, Philly in 1855, Newark, New Jersey, and Baltimore in 1857. By the late 1880s, a lot of the major U.S. cities had their municipal police forces. So we're talking about still a lot of major northern cities. Now, this was happening in the north, while in the south, a whole nother thing was going on. Actual slave patrols going on in the south, right? The first formal slave patrol was created in the Carolina colonies in 1704. Slave patrols had 3 primary functions. 1, to chase down, apprehend, and return to their owners runaway slaves. 2, to provide a form of organized terror to deter slave revolts. And 3, to maintain a form of discipline for slave workers who were subject to summary justice outside the law if it violated any plantation rules, right? So after that, after the slave patrols were implemented, then you had all these other vigilante groups, the KKK being created. Then you had these laws that helped to enforce this other stuff, like supporting laws that helped to support the brutality that the police forces were inflicting upon black people in the United States. Jim Crow laws came much later, but let's talk about the black codes first. The slave codes, excuse me. The slave codes, right? So when the slave codes were created, they had to be enforced. So more police brutality. So the South Carolina Act of 1740 said, whereas the having slaves taught to write or suffering them to be employed in writing may be attended with great inconveniences, be it enacted that all and every person and persons whatsoever who shall either teach or cause any slave or slaves to be taught to write, or shall use or employ any slave as a scribe in any manner of writing whatsoever hereafter taught to write, every such person or person shall for every such offense forfeit the sum of 100 pounds current money. So that was for South Carolina. In Virginia, the slave code of 1819 stated that all meetings or assemblages of slaves or free Negroes or mulattoes mixing and associating with such slaves at any meeting house or houses in the night, or at any school or schools for teaching them or reading or writing, either in the day or night, under whatsoever pretext, shall be deemed and considered an unlawful assembly, and any justice of a county wherein such assembly shall be, either from his own knowledge or the information of others of such unlawful assemblage, may use his warrant directed to any sworn officer or officers authorizing him or them to enter the house or houses where such unlawful assemblages may be, the purpose of apprehending or dispersing such slaves, and to inflict corporal punishment on the offender or offenders at the discretion of any justice of the peace, not exceeding 20 lashes. So basically you can see in there, especially in the codes of Virginia, that force, brutal force, physical force can be used to correct action, right? And those who caught them could act as the enforcers of the law, right? The patrollers. And so we also had the Casual Killing Act that was passed on October of 1669, which stated, whereas the only law in force for the punishment or refractory servants resisting their master, mistresses, or overseer cannot be inflicted upon Negroes, nor the obstinacy of many of them by other than violent means suppressed, be it enacted and declared by this grand assembly, if any slave resists his master, or others by his master's order correcting him, and by the extremity of the correction should chance to die, that his death shall not be considered a felony, but the master or that other person appointed by the master to punish him be acquitted from molestation, since it cannot be presumed that malice existed, which alone makes murder a felony, or that anything should induce a man to destroy his own estate. So laws were created to protect not only the slave patrol and the police officers or the coppers or whatever title that they use, not only basically these laws were created to help protect those who killed the slaves. So our modern police forces are nothing but a melding of the night watchers and the day watchers and the I guess you could say the prototype of the modern patrollers from the north and the slave patrollers from the south. So that's what our police forces are today. But the emphasis has always been to keep the unruly in line, and we, us black people, we have always been considered as the unruly, or the ones who needed to be kept in line by the officers of the law. Now, this is something that I think all black people should know, especially if you're a black person who is a police officer or thinking about being a police officer. I think you just understand the institution that you're joining. Now, I do live in a city where I can say that the police officers here may not, we don't get treated to the same extent as other black people in other cities, but nevertheless the oppression is still there. So no matter even if you live in a city where you yourself may not have ever had any bad interactions with police officers or officers of the law, that doesn't mean that the systematic oppression is not there. It's a part of the foundation of the systems. The information is there. Just Google it, look it up. The information is there. So these are things that we need to understand. That's why it's so important that, like I said in my previous video, that we build and control our communities. We have to be able to control what's going on, what goes on around us, and protect it as well. But we must know who we're dealing with and what we're dealing with. We have to know. We must know what's going on around us. We must know the history of the institutions that were designed to enslave us. The patrols were created to keep the slaves in line, keep them in fear, and make sure that they stay on the plantation. Make sure not only that they stay on the plantation, but that they stay obedient on the plantation. And if you weren't on the plantation, they want to make sure that you yourself stay obedient. But they could, the patrolmen or the officers could also just burst in a black person's house whenever they wanted to and just do whatever they wanted to. Those are the things that were going on. So we've been living in constant fear and terror of these patrolmen since we got here. We have, since they brought us here. Since these modern day chattel slave systems were created, the patrols were created to keep the slaves in line, especially since the slaves outnumbered the masters or the whites or the ruling class. So we need to be able to understand what we're dealing with and what's going on. We have to control our own communities. We have to control our own communities. It's on us to make our situation better. But it's also very, very, very important that we know I keep saying we have to know our history. We have to know what's going on. We have to understand what's going on around us. Understand how these laws and these different documentations were created to further enslave us and keep us where we need to be. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. I appreciate you for watching, and I love you for your support, and thank you very much. Catch y'all next time.